Today we're continuing my series on great negotiators, and I'm picking someone who I think is one of the most underrated negotiators, and her name is Rose Goetmoeller. Now you are thinking, probably, who is Rose? So she's currently at Stanford University, but she has had a truly illustrious career in diplomacy and foreign affairs. So first of all, she was the Undersecretary of State for Nuclear Disarmament at the State Department during the Obama administration. In fact, she was the head U.S. negotiator in the New START Treaty with Russia. Following that, from 2016 to 2019, she was the first ever Deputy Secretary General of the NATO alliance. She is somebody who has worked with diplomats around the world for many, many decades. And the third one is definitely the most important. Today, I'm going to share with you 3 key attributes that Rose Goetmoeller has that put her in this pantheon of great negotiators. So first, Rose is incredibly well prepared on both substance and process. So what do I mean by substance and process? So by substance, I mean she knows all of the details of what it is she is negotiating. So I've had the pleasure of having her speak in my negotiation class years ago at Harvard Law School. One of the things I came across is that she could call to mind with great precision obscure details about nuclear operations and weapons and arms that I think probably no one on the planet could. But her preparation is not just on the substance. She also makes the time and puts in the effort to understand the culture of the people with whom she's negotiating. So in this case, right, it was with the Russians. And she's somebody who had a deep and intimate knowledge of Russian culture and tradition. But her third domain of preparation was around the process. One of the things she really understands is that the way you set up the negotiation will ultimately drive the kind of substantive outcomes you can get. And a common error that I see with many in negotiation is that they skip over the process, thinking like, oh, we should get right into the details. And that is an error of major proportion. It's funny, one of the times I had her speak in my class, I had a student in the class who was quite skeptical on the importance of process in negotiation. And the whole semester, he was kind of poo-pooing process as soft and touchy-feely and not that important. And so here comes Rose on the penultimate day of class. And after she gives her presentation, the first question comes from the student. He raises his hand and he says, "Madam Secretary, how much time did you spend on process in the negotiations with the Russians on New START?" And she says, "Oh, it was an incredibly efficient negotiation. We got almost immediately to substance. In fact, our process negotiation only lasted 6 months." And suddenly this student frowns and becomes docile. And I thought, right? Because really great negotiators know that process really matters and that processes can often take way more than 6 months. But to this student, 6 months felt like a very long time. I think he expected her to say something like, oh, we spent, 2 meetings on it, not 6 months. Second key quality that Rose brings to the negotiation table is that she knows how to manage the behind-the-table interactions. A key thing that many negotiators fail to take into account is managing the negotiations that are happening not across the table, but within their own delegation or behind the negotiation table. So I have seen this show up in all sorts of situations. So for example, if I'm mediating a labor management dispute, what I find sometimes is that the one side might be doing a very good job negotiating across the table, but what's happening is behind the table, let's say the union membership, is getting completely unrealistic expectations about what this mediation might yield. And so in the end, the deal blows up, not because of the interactions across the table, but because of the failure to handle the interactions behind the table. Before we get to the third and most important point, let me share a story of how strategic Rose was in managing these behind-the-table interactions. So, as you can imagine, nuclear disarmament negotiations are largely dominated by men. And in this case, of course, there was this extremely skillful lead negotiator who was a woman. And it became clear to her that there were at least some people on her side, on the American side of the negotiations, who were concerned about whether she would be tough enough to actually stand up to the Russians. And she could tell them she was going to be tough enough. But what she decided to do at a strategic moment in the negotiations was to actually use anger with the Russians in a targeted and strategic way, not to actually in any way chasten the Russians, but to demonstrate to those doubters on her own side that she was tough enough and up to the task. Okay, so now for the last attribute, the one you've been waiting for. It's a key one for any great negotiator. And it's that Rose knows how to separate the people from the problem. So what do I mean by that? Well, she is somebody who is tenacious, strong, and assertive on the substantive issues. This is why we as Americans were very lucky to have her as the lead negotiator in these negotiations. But she can distinguish toughness on the problem from toughness on the people. And she was incredibly good at building genuine relationships with Russian negotiators on the other side of the negotiation. That ability helped her to see this very important negotiation for the United States and Russia through to the end. So, to recap, 3 key qualities that Rose Goetmoeller brings to negotiations that make her worthy to be in the great negotiator pantheon are: 1, she is super well prepared on substance and on process. 2, she manages the behind-the-table interactions sufficiently so that when she gets a deal, she knows she can sell it to those on her side. And 3, she brings this critically important quality of separating people from the problem. In other words, we could be really tenacious and tough on a problem without being mean-spirited with the people. So, if you want to continue to learn from some great negotiators, watch this next video on Roger Fisher, the founder of the program on negotiation at Harvard Law School. Also, if you are new to my channel, I'd be really grateful if you would hit the subscribe button, ring the bell so you get notifications every single time there's a new video, and of course, like this video. Finally, if you have nominations for other great negotiators I should profile, please drop them into the comments. Okay, you know you want to learn how to be a great negotiator yourself. Keep watching.